This little beauty is the Dell Optiplex 960 small form factor from 2009. And today we're going to open her up and give her a little upgrade. Okay, we're going to start by taking the case of this thing off. So we've got a tab here, then we just lift the side off and put it somewhere out of the way. Okay, these old Dells have a slightly weird toolless hard drive mounting system. So you've got this black box and the hard drive sits inside it. If we squeeze these two blue tabs and just lift it out, you can see the 160 gig Western Digital hard drive that used to house Windows Vista. So disconnect both of these and just put them somewhere out of the way. We won't be needing this anymore, so we'll just pop it over here. Okay, let's get into the meat of it then. We're going to be putting an SSD in this and changing the processor and the RAM and putting a graphics card in it. So let's start by taking the old SATA cable out. Given that this blue SATA cable's been in here for 11 years, I'm going to change it out for a different one. Now, these Dell power supplies don't have that many connectors on them. You've got a mini SATA power, you've got one full SATA power, then you've got a mini 20-pin ATX, and then a 4-pin EPS connector. So if we move these out of the way, next thing then, we need to take this heatsink and fan block off the processor. So for that, we're going to need Phillips head screws, Phillips head screwdriver. There's 4 screws holding the heatsink block down. Just go ahead and unscrew these. Doesn't make any difference what order they come out in. So the joy of these old Dell machines is that everything comes apart so easily, because they were built so that technicians in the field could take them apart as quickly as possible. Right. With this heatsink out the way, we can see the processor in here, and it's covered in some lovely heatsink paste. No way that's original. So let's pull the arm back and get this processor out and take a look what we're dealing with. So right away, this processor's got an extra notch in it, so it's definitely not standard. These small form factor Dell boxes usually came with a dual core E5400 in them. This isn't that. Let's get this heatsink compound cleaned off it. Yeah, if we have a look at the back here, there's a strip of Captain tape across some of the contact pads. So I would put my money on this being an old Xeon. Let's clean it up a little bit. Yeah, that's exactly what it is.
It's an old Xeon E5.
So this process has been modified to fit a 775 board, and that strip of Captain tape, in theory, should allow it to work with it. Given that we picked this Dell up as not working spares and repairs, I would say either the chip's dead or the BIOS doesn't support it. It's really interesting to find this CPU in one of these Dell boxes, because quite often they crop up on eBay and AliExpress as job lots from recyclers and refurbishers. Okay. Next thing then, we need to clean this case up because it is disgusting. Oh, let's take this RAM out. It looks like we've got some mismatched RAM. Got some Corsair XMS2, and then we've got 2 1GB Samsung chips, and I think that's a 1GB SK Hynix chip. Okay, we won't be reusing these, so these can go away. We just take all of these RAM chips out and put them to the side. It's almost a shame because they look like they're in good condition. but there's very little use for DDR2 RAM when it's only in 1GB sticks. Okay, now the RAM's out, it's time to clean this thing. There's so much dust in the bottom of it, and it's all just grimy and disgusting. So I'm going to take this away, and we will return shortly with a cleaned case. Okay, I've cleaned all of the inside of the case out, taken all the dust out of the front and replaced the silver grille on it. That's had a little vacuum out, and the bottom of the case has had a wipe. So next thing then, we better fit our replacement CPU before I get my fat fingers in here and bend any of the pins. So to go in this, we've got a Q9400. I've checked the datasheet for this model, and this is on the approved list, so you could buy this 960 with one of these fitted straight from Dell. So this little CPU's a quad-core 2.66 gigahertz. That should give us a little bit more grunt, but it's going to make more heat. So put this the right way around, and we'll just get it in the socket. Right, let's grab our replacement heatsink. So the stock cooler on this is just a big block of machined aluminium. So it's an aluminium block with fins on it and a fan either side. This new one's got a copper base plate to make contact with the IHS on the processor, and it looks like it's got some heat pipes going at the side. So this should be able to dissipate heat quite considerably better than the big aluminium block. Yeah, if we look at the processor that was in it, it looks like the old block was making good contact with it. So these 4 sprung screws seems like quite a good mounting mechanism. Let's get these fan cables plugged in. So it looks like the front fan is a power managed one, so it can ramp up and down, and the rear fan is just on maximum all the time. Before we put the heatsink block down, we need to get some thermal compound onto our processor. So I'm going to be using Arctic MX4 for this. Ideally, you want to do this in pea-sized blobs, but there's a few approved methods. I prefer the put it all over the place and hope for the best method. The heatsink's got some sprung clips at the front, so if we line those up, then it should sit perfectly to put the screws in. Okay, if we get these power cables out of the way, I'm going to go in with the small screwdriver and do these up in a cross pattern. That should allow even distribution of pressure and even distribution of the paste all over the IHS, and it should make good contact with the heatsink block as well. So we can do these up, and you'll feel when they're done because they're sprung, so they won't allow you to do any more. Just nip them up with a big screwdriver. Yeah, that's all the way in now. Okay, let's just check the others, make sure we're getting even pressure. Okay, that's our new heatsink installed. Let's just put these power cables out of the way. Next thing to get in there then, I've got my new RAM chips. These are all DDR2 as well. Obviously that's all that will fit this board, but what I've got is 2 SK Hynix chips and 2 Samsung chips. They're all 2 GB, so that will give a total of 8 GB RAM in this thing. If we put these in the matching slots, they should be able to operate in dual channel mode, at least according to the datasheet for this. So if we just go ahead and get these the right way around and give them a firm press in on each one, make sure the little retaining clips at the side snap into place. Now this RAM, when it's up and running, should be operating at 800 MHz, which is a little bit faster than what was in before. Okay, that should be all of them in now. Now I've noticed there's a little bit of heatsink compound kicking around, so I'm just going to clean it up. Obviously, a heatsink compound contains all sorts of fun chemicals. Now, I wasn't planning on eating it today, but I don't want to smear it all over the tools, the table, or the nice clean case. Okay, we're going to fit the SSD next. So I've got a 128GB Kingston A400 drive. Now, this is just about the cheapest 128GB drive you can buy from a well-known manufacturer that still has a DRAM cache on it. What this means is our data is going to write nice and quickly. I'm also using that new SATA cable I mentioned. It locks at both ends and it's right angled on the drive end, so it shouldn't get too much in the way. You may have noticed we've got a gaping hole in the front of our case here, so we're going to fill this with something a little bit special. What I've got here is an original Dell Optiplex 960 small form factor, fully optional, fully operational DVD rewriter drive. Now, this is where our special power supply connector comes in. Obviously, this doesn't take a full-size SATA power. It only takes this little mini half-size one that's on the power supply. Okay, now that's plugged in, we just need to make sure that none of the cables from the SSD get in the way, because this drive is just going to sit on top of it. So we line it up in place and then we push this little toolless tab down and it just slots in and then locks in place when we release it. So if we line that up at the front, give it a little wiggle, give it a push, and then plug the SATA cable in for it. So this board comes with 3 SATA ports, but only one full-size SATA power and nowhere to put another drive. Okay, pretty much time for the last thing then. We need to get our graphics card installed. So what I've got to go in this is a low profile MSI GT710 2GB, which is a little bit newer than our system here, but it should give us quite a bit more power than the onboard graphics. Doesn't require any other power connectors, so it'll fit nicely in this small form factor case, and it's got a DVI and a HDMI output. Once that's in the slot, there's a little cover. Doesn't require any screws, you just fold it down and it locks with the blue tab. That is pretty much our system rebuild done. So just grab the side cover. All the panels on this little box are in remarkably good condition given its age. Just slots in along these notches at the bottom. Pop it on, give it a press, clean all the fingerprints that are in thermal compound off the top of the case, and that is our build done. So this little Dell box can now go into service as an emulation machine, or as a Plex server, or as a media streaming server. Thanks for making it to the end. Subscribe for more content with retro tech and development.